One of the things that I think is most important is the most high-performing go-to-market teams align daily. So there is a touch point, maybe it's 15 minutes, maybe it's a half an hour, but you're checking in on each other.
Welcome to Managed Chaos Podcast, where we give you the startup business rundown in less time than it takes for you to get to work.
I'm Katrina Purcell, and today we are on episode 2 of our 4-part series on go-to-market with Jenn Ravalli. Jenn is a go-to-market executive with more than 15 years of experience building scalable growth engines across startups, scale-ups, and global enterprises, and most recently has launched her own firm, Maverick Meridian, to help all of you founders out there struggling with go-to-market. Jenn, do you find people often struggle with go-to-market?
Yes.
Yes, 1,000%, right?
Yeah, it's very hard to go into any organization and not see that there are some cracks in the go-to-market piece.
Let's start talking about one of those cracks, which I really love that Jenn has stickers that have all of her little sayings. So this one says, your pipeline has a strategy problem. Jenn, what's wrong with the pipeline? Come on.
So your strategy is your roadmap.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what you are giving your team in order to execute against what is going to make your company most successful.
Mm-hmm.
So think of it as your Bible for decision making. And oftentimes there isn't one. So your teams run in various different directions, going after whatever person will talk to them. And you end up with a lot of pipeline that actually can't move through the funnel. And this happens across all aspects of go-to-market. You see it most in opportunities because you're counting on them.
Mm-hmm.
It can happen anywhere. It can happen in terms of the wrong leads are coming in. It can happen with the wrong opportunities that aren't going to close along the timeline that you think they are. But you can always walk it back to, did the team know what they should be going after, who they should be going after, and with what product and how? And if they can't answer that question and they're just trying to hunt anything that moves, you're going to end up with serious problems and a pipeline that doesn't convert to revenue.
So this is where I see a lot of friction in organizations, especially those that are moving from founder-led sales to salesperson. Often the founder tends to always blame that lead salesperson or potentially marketing for why that pipeline isn't looking the way they want it to look. Why is that a fundamental issue?
It's a fundamental issue because you haven't agreed on what is a qualified opportunity. And what a founder-led sales structure may have thought was a qualified opportunity may have been somebody who was willing to take their call versus a sales leader who wants to put it through paces to make sure that it really means something and that it has a probability that it's going to close.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't fundamentally get aligned around the definitions, then you're going to end up with a lot of pain. The other thing is oftentimes, this is such a wonderful product. Sales and marketing sometimes have to call the product ugly and say, but it doesn't fit for this profile. And if that's the case, the founder may still want to put some of those deals into the pipeline when we know that they're not going to end up being good customer experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And so there can be a lot of tension when you start to professionalize sales and marketing because you're coming with different tools and different ideas on what does good look like. And it's hard often for the founder to give over that control to sales and marketing leadership to disqualify out things.
It's hard for founders to give up control in general, but that's probably a whole nother podcast. Something that an old boss told me that really stuck with me, I told him, I just hate sales. I'm not a salesperson. And he said, everyone is a salesperson. Everyone's part of sales. And one of the things that you specialize in is really aligning teams sort of across that whole revenue engine. So it's not just sales. Mm-hmm. It's not just marketing, right? Product, ops, everybody who's touching a customer is part of that revenue engine. So how do you force all of these sort of siloed groups who may sometimes feel like sales is not my problem? It's their job to bring in the numbers. I'm doing my little part over here. How do you force them to align?
So a lot of that is about how do you bring people together?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I think is most important is the most high-performing go-to-market teams align daily. So there is a touch point, maybe it's 15 minutes, maybe it's a half an hour, but you're checking in on each other. How is the product build going? Do we anticipate that there are going to be any risks? How is pipeline moving? Is there anything you need from me in order to make something happen? There's maybe a big strategic account that might be in play. Like, what can marketing do to help bring that over the line? And when you have that level of trust and that level of companionship in being able to say we are in this together, things are much more likely to move in the right direction. It doesn't mean that you're not passionate, that you don't fight, or that you don't disagree, but you're much more willing to hug each other and have lunch once that conversation is over than a team that doesn't talk at all, runs in different directions, and may start pitting each other against each other.
Yeah, and I think the most important thing is that the team you described that is willing to work together, it doesn't mean they're not competitive. It just means that they're not competitive against each other, but competitive against their actual competitors.
Yeah, exactly. You need to embrace the fact that you are different than the competition and not try and copy the competition. And it can be really easy for folks to be like, well, so-and-so did this. Should we do that too? When if you can hold the line as a team that you need to lay into our differentiation more, that can be a really positive way to both bring the team together, but also make you far more successful in terms of building that pipeline and driving that strategic revenue through.
And I've seen that be a place where marketing really can transform sales decks when you start to think about objection handling and when you start to think about truly what is differentiating. Because sales doesn't always know that, right? Marketing is the one who's putting everything together, taking things from product, taking things from the ops team and saying, here's actually what makes us different.
Yeah, so I actually grew up through product marketing. I helped originate the function at a Fortune 100 company, and it is one of the key areas that often is overlooked, that strategic input that really plays a role in helping product build the roadmap, evangelizing what that roadmap means to the customer, and listening to the customer at all times. So they're very well connected across that go-to-market ecosystem. I often call it the pituitary gland of go-to-market, because if you can get that right, then everything else works. But oftentimes, product marketing is not necessarily elevated the way that it should in order to be able to play that role. But it is their role to make sure that we're building to be different and not building to be me too. And it can often get really dicey in those conversations, because that may also be a time when they're contrarian compared to the rest of the team. But it's an exciting place to be as well, because you have that balance of technical skill with the ability to articulate a message in the market that's really going to resonate with your buyer.
Yeah, and one of the things that I really loved working with you and your marketing team is the focus on data. There are typically early warning signs, right? There are these silent red flags, we'll call them, that tell you that a company's pipeline is either failing or it's that there's more of a strategy issue as opposed to an execution issue. Because I think oftentimes we think that was on the pipeline and now it's fallen off. Someone must not be executing properly. Did they not take the right person to lunch? Did they not have the right conversation? How are you able to start to dig into that data to show that it's really a strategy problem?
So the first thing that you'll see is that there's nothing that shows a pattern in the types of opportunities that have now made it to stage 2. So you'll see they're all over the map, that people, they may be the wrong persona, they may be the wrong size, they may be the wrong discipline within kind of a vertical. And if you cannot see a really strong pattern within the opportunities, you can't build patterns related to when those will close, whether they have next steps. Those are other key things that will show up. So inability to be able to forecast against your sales cycles. You anticipate a enterprise deal with 1,000 employees is going to close in 30 days. If you start to see those things, you know that we either have hope, which is not a strategy, too much hope, or not enough discipline around what should you really be looking for in the right customers to bring through to opportunities. And then how do you understand the behavior of those customers to make sure that what you said is going to happen actually will.
And one of the important things that I want us to spend a little bit more time on is this concept of the qualified lead, right? So that when you have that pipeline, and you and I both know there's a way you could build that pipeline, which is literally just a spreadsheet of every person you know that's in the industry that you're looking at, right? Or there's a way to start to say, are they a sales qualified lead? Are they a marketing qualified lead? Let's talk through sort of what those levels of qualification look like.
Sure. So it's very important that you agree on qualification criteria. And I tend to be about being more stringent than less in terms of I'd rather qualify out more than qualify in and have a dirty pipeline to start with. I also think that it's marketing's job to make sure that you're bringing in really, really high quality stuff in the first place, because that kind of sets the chain reaction for everything else. And I don't want to fight about it. Basically, you look at the criteria related to, did they actually raise their hand and say, I'm interested in your product, is kind of that first level of test.
A basic level.
I am buying XYZ and I'm interested in learning more about yours. Next is really, okay, that's great, but can they actually afford it? Do they meet your criteria for success? And it's not just some random 1 or 2 person group that may want you desperately, but isn't going to be successful and can't afford you. And then the next piece is, okay, what is their timeline around when they're looking to make a decision? Because you'll get a much better idea on whether or not they're serious about that. Before anything is an opportunity, you want to make sure that they've gone through an actual demo and that they're still showing signs that they are interested. Of course, that's in a tech situation. Not all situations are tech, but it's very important that once they've actually seen you in action, that they're still showing those signs before you're going to drive them into an opportunity.
And you said something very important, is that they can afford you and they can continue to afford you, because it does you no good to qualify someone, close them, and have them churn 6 months later because they actually can't.
Or never go live.
Or never go live. Well, I think we've already really worked at defining qualified lead, but let's talk about what it might look like to create a service level agreement or an SLA between sales and marketing, because I find those two groups to be somewhat the most combative. Followed closely by sales and product, but let's focus on sales and marketing.
And that often happens because of fundamental differences in how people think about sales and marketing. There are teams that feel like they should be peanut butter and jelly, and there are teams that feel that healthy competition is good, and that standard is generally set by the CEO or founder on how that will play out and how they hire. I love service level agreements. It's usually one of the very first things I will do, because it allows everybody to say, this is what I owe you and this is what you owe me. And there are certain things that you may forget about that an SLA reminds you to do. I can create all the leads in marketing that you want, but if they're not actually touched in a time frame that's going to drive them to conversion, they probably won't end up being opportunities. And now you've wasted a whole bunch of money getting that lead. On the flip side, like, how much do I owe to sales, and how do I build the right investment strategy in order to get them there is something that I owe them as a marketing leader. You have to really think through, what are the things that we owe each other? What are our shared goals? And what are the timeframes and process? It can happen really fast where, okay, you have 3 sales reps and it feels really manageable. Suddenly you have 6 and it's not. Being able to say very clearly between sales and marketing, this is what we agreed to, and if it's not happening, we're going to call it out first, is really important.
So one thing I've learned from this episode is that you need a sticker that says your pipeline is dirty, because I think that would be great. That is the end of episode 2 of our Go-to-Market series with Jenn. We are going to be back for the next episode next week, but thank you for joining us on this episode of Managed Cast Podcast. Please like, follow, and subscribe anywhere that you listen to your podcasts, and we will see you next time.
Outsourcing your US tech talent shouldn't be hard. With Pobble.io, we deliver high-quality teams on demand and provide huge cost savings to your business. Try it now at Pobble.io. Mention the amazing guys at Managed Chaos when you email us and get a free market data report. Email contact@Pobble.io.